Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Today we have Brian Geltzeiler, hoops critic on Twitter, to talk to us a little bit about the NBA and what's going on. So, Brian, let's talk Lakers. What are you thinking about their playoff chances these days?
I think they're getting in, Nick. I don't think there's any. I mean, they're 1.5 back after the 3 losses from Wednesday night for Utah, Golden State, and Houston. They're 1.5 back Houston right now. Schedule eases up for them in March, even though they have a bunch of road games, and they're playing a lot better. So last night's big win in Minnesota, home to Minnesota, not a hard win, but an important win, and the Lakers are making progress in that direction. And if I'm one of those top 3 teams in the West, I don't want to have to play them in the first round.
Interesting. You know, the 10 to 15 road games in March I kept pointing to earlier as a reason why they weren't going to make it. Upon further inspection, though, as you pointed out, the teams aren't as good. Are you sure that the top 2 or 3 teams should be scared of playing them?
I do. I think so, because I think what's starting to happen with them is Howard looks like a different player. Howard's motivated a little bit. He, for one reason or another, he's finally starting to feel the love from them in terms of them wanting him back, with them not trading him. Some permanency starting to head in there. Him and Kobe, as much as we played the soap opera up, they're starting to play much better together on a court, and that's the important thing. So you pull all these things together. This is a basketball team with a lot of talent, and if they can manage to get enough stops, and that's always going to be the big question with them, if they can manage to get enough stops, this is a tough team to play.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about the Spurs, because everyone forgets about them. They don't realize the next thing you know, they have the best record in the league. Was it an anomaly last year when they got beat after the first 2 games against the OKC, or is this a team that can actually get to the finals?
I think it's important, Nick, to realize that this San Antonio team, even though the personnel is similar, very different than last year's San Antonio team. They play a little bit of a slower tempo. They're a better defensive team. Thiago Splitter playing more minutes. It's been a very big deal for them. Tim Duncan's going to need some rest come playoff time, and you're going to need somebody to play next to him to take a lot of heavy load off him when he's on the court. Splitter does that for them. The one thing I'd watch here with San Antonio in the next few weeks is that they're looking like a tired team. They lost to Phoenix at home in overtime the other night, and they didn't score a point in the overtime. It's dead legs. So you're going to see Pop, when that happens, is going to go on a rest fest. You'll see Duncan all of a sudden, he's got a groin issue tonight. Tony Parker's got a back issue tonight. These aren't real issues. These are rest issues. Miami did it the other night with Battier. You'll start to see that more and more in the season with the smarter teams doing that. The Spurs are one of those teams.
Well, let's move on to the Eastern Conference then. And, what's going on with the Knicks these days? They seem to be struggling a little bit. What are you seeing there?
Well, I see 2 problems. Number one, they're not hitting the volume of 3-pointers they were earlier in the year, and they're certainly taking enough. And the second problem is not guarding anybody. And right now, from a perimeter defensive standpoint, they're a mess. Plus, when you take Chandler out of the game and you have a front line of Stoudemire, Carmelo Anthony, and Steve Novak, you're not stopping anybody inside. That's why I think if Kenyon Martin can work out for them and be a guy you put next to Stoudemire, at least you have some defensive presence on that front line with Chandler out of the game. And all you really need it for is 10 to 15 minutes a game, because Chandler plays, 30, 35 minutes and upwards of that. So I think that's going to help them a lot. But again, if they can guard on the perimeter, and Felton's gotten weaker defensively, and Smith's gotten weaker defensively, and Shumpert's not back total, and Jason Kidd's exhausted from Woodson running him into the ground earlier in the year. So yeah, a lot of different issues here. And Woodson can't worry so much about seeding and regular season wins at this stage. Have a healthy, rested team to start the playoffs. This is his most important goal right now.
And there's no question, when I was breaking it down in the beginning of the year, I was predicting they were going to have a lot of trouble because they were relying on 6 guys who shoot over 40% from 3. They were helping one pass away, giving up wide open shots that weren't going down. And so now teams have adjusted. They're making those shots. They're not making the 3-pointers. Yeah, it's a pretty ugly recipe. Kenyon Martin, I'm not sold if I had to buy that. Maybe the fear that he'll punch him in the mouth when they go in the bat, is enough for the defense. But who knows? I don't quite see it. But then again, this Eastern Conference is very strange. Is there anybody else you see that could do some damage against Miami?
There's one team and one team only, because I don't think the Knicks can, and that's the Indiana Pacers. They are big enough, they're tough enough, they play this slow down style that can take the ball out of the air out of the ball a little bit with Miami. Plus last year they were up 2-1. Granted, Bosh is out, and Miami went and played small ball and ran him out of the gym. This year, with the emergence of Lance Stevenson and now Danny Granger being back from injury, they can match up with a nice small ball team at certain points in time. West, Granger at stretch 4 with George Stevenson and a point guard, and all of a sudden you're okay against Miami's athletic teams. So for Indiana, I think they give Miami all they can handle in a playoff series. I really do, because they're that versatile right now, and you still have that effect of West and Hibbert and pound Miami into the ground for periods of time, because Spoelstra's not going to play small the whole time. He's going to go against big lineups, and you have to against Indiana or they'll kill you.
Now, is Hibbert going to finally sort of figure it out again and get back to 15 and 10?
Here's the thing about Hibbert. Offensively, I think too much has been made over his offensive limitations this year because he hasn't been great offensively, but he doesn't have to be. David West has been so good this year down the low post. What they need Hibbert to do is what he does, and that's defend the rim really, really well, bang people in the post. And frankly, I thought one of the best things that happened to Indiana was seeing Hibbert get all fired up the other night in that fight against Golden State and throwing people around. You haven't seen a nasty streak like that from Roy Hibbert very often, and if he has that type of edge in the playoffs, there's a physical advantage Indiana derives that's tough for anybody in the East to match up with.
Well, I can't argue with that. I'm certainly thinking that maybe the Bulls can find something in there if Derrick Rose comes back. What do you think? Is he going to come back?
I think right now one of the reasons they're postponing him coming back is because of how poorly the Bulls are playing. There's no reason to bring Derrick Rose back unless you think you can make a title run this year. There's no reason to take the risk. And right now, this team, with the amount of minutes Tom Thibodeau's placed on Lil Deng and Joakim Noah and to a lesser extent Gibson, they're exhausted and they're banged up, and it's hard for them right now. Heinrich, they've counted on a lot. He's an older player. Richard Hamilton, the same thing. He's done. So you look at what's happening there. Do you bring Derrick Rose back into the situation? Here's the other thing, Nick. You can't hand Tom Thibodeau Derrick Rose and say, play him 20, 25 minutes a game for a week and a half. He's not going to do that. He's too competitive. As soon as he gets him back, it's 30, 35 minutes, pedal to the metal. We want Derrick Rose hitting shots for us and winning games for us. So I think being careful about bringing him back is the smartest long-term decision they can make.
Well, there you have it, sports fans. That is a pretty comprehensive review of what's going on in both conferences in the NBA. Thanks to Brian Geltzeiler. Make sure you follow him at Hoops Critic. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?
I'm in.